Hello and welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows, and welcome to Farm Lodge Country House. For the first part of this week, we've been down in Jamestown on the island of Helena, staying at the Mantis. We've had a lovely time. Today we move to somewhere more peaceful, more stately, the home of Stephen and Maureen, our hosts for the next few days, as I continue to explore, amongst other things, the wine on the island. And not just the wine history, as we did on Monday's show, and we looked back at Napoleon and his love of Constantia, but what wine is like today. What is the wine story on the island of St. Helena? Now, I've wandered around, I've met some people, I've had several glasses of wine over some wonderful dinners, mostly with exceptional seafood, and there are a few things I've discovered. The majority of wine here on the island is South African. There's not a huge range to be found, but what is here is generally enjoyed by some people who've developed a real passion for wine. And so today on the show, we're exploring that a little further. We're going to be meeting up with a lady called Tara, who's kind of the driving force of wine on the island. She organises an annual wine tasting event, and she's brought brands like Springfield and Delheim into the homes and onto the shelves of St. Helena, and done so with some success. So we'll catch up with her later on in today's show, and we'll also catch up with a lady called Sally. There is actually a wine from the island. Now, technically it's sort of from the island. The juice comes over from South Africa, but it is made here on the distillery, and Sally will tell us how that happens and what the story behind it is. My host today, and he'll be anchoring the show with me, is Stephen, one of our two hosts here at Farm Lodge Country House, a man with a great history at sea who now calls St. Helena home and has got one of the coolest cellars I've been to, not just because of what's in the cellar, and I think you'll recognise the brands, but also where it is, because it turns out it's quite tricky to find. So all that coming up on today's show. I'm going to go and try and find this cellar with Steve. For now, here's a quick look at this week's wine news. Coming up on Monday, the 25th of May at Norman Goodfellows, this will be the store as usual down in Four Ways. It's a chance to taste the wines of Le Chant, the sister winery to Tybosh as well as to Pink Valley. Pietri Fent is making some terrific wine. Just the two, a white and a red. What are they? What do they taste like? What's the story behind these wines? Well, come and join Pietri and myself on Monday the 25th. We'd love to see you, love to share some wine with you. If you'd like to come along, you can get your tickets at Norman Goodfellows. Go online, get them. It's £100. All of that money goes to charity, and your chance to learn some more about some terrific wine and also get to meet Pietri, who's one of the coolest young winemakers around at the moment. Then also coming up, and this is just before that, I'm going to be down on my annual pilgrimage to the Cape as we head out on the Alps of Cape Epic. And together with Ronaldo, my trusty lieutenant, we'll be visiting a whole pile of estates, including Mullineux, where we're going to be doing something rather special with the Cape Winemakers Guild, linked to last year's Dan Really Likes Wine charity auction. Look out. Social media, plenty of coverage and some special stuff coming up on the show as well as we nip into Tulbach, check out Wellington, visit the Swartland and finish off in Stellenbosch. It's going to be a very, very busy week. Keep your eye out for some exclusive content over the next little while. And if you've got a moment between now and Monday, look out for the current Strauss auction. It's a celebration of 10-year-old vintages 2014. What was it like as a wine year? Well, according to Wine Mag and their latest prescient report, some pretty good wine came out of that year, led by people like Ernie Elson. Not just the reds, Takara had a 10-year-old white that got some very high scoring from the judges. Those and others from the 2014 vintage available on Strauss at the moment. Log on, get shopping, and get yourself some wine from 10 years ago, celebrating the vintage that was 2014. Here we are in this wonderful cellar at the Farm Lodge Country House. You've just seen Steve open it up and welcome us in. Hey, thank you so much for having us, and especially in your very cool underground cellar here.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's a bit tight, but it's comfortable.
Before we get into the wine, and I can't wait to dive into it, give us a little bit of background. How did you come to be on St. Helena?
I was born in Plymouth and went to public school and then on to my work, which became, I went to sea at 15 and was basically at sea most of my time. I did have a good time right the way through, and then finished my sea time in 1966. Yeah.
Tell me, Steve, a little bit about your love of wine.
Oh yes, I am very. I enjoy my wine. Let's put it that way. It's not a love of my life by any means, but I've been to many sort of places and just tasted the wines there all in my life because I was being at sea, and I learnt a lot. But now I've just sort of started to get the use of it, and that's more or less my amount of wine.
Well, there is some lovely wine here. In fact, some of it has been poured. It's sitting breathing in the glass. We're going to try it in just a second. But before Steve and I start working our way industrially through his cellar, let's jump back to a day or two ago where I got to catch up with somebody who's had a huge impact on wine on the island. Her name is Tara. She's behind the annual wine tasting here, and she's got rather a nice and rather familiar collection of wine here in St. Helena. Adventures we've had around the world with Dan Really Likes Wine, you'll know that one of the things I love is discovering South African wine in unexpected places. I remember years ago stumbling into a tiny little grocery store in a backwater in Laos and finding a bottle of Robertson wine. It had been there for some time. I probably wouldn't have drunk it, but it was really cool to see it there. And I've had that happen all over the world, and I've had that happen today, because every single person I've spoken to in St. Helena said if you want to find the best wine on the island, you need to go to a place called Rose and Crown, and you need to try and find Tara. Well, I found Tara. She's got some great wine, and she's agreed to hang out with us. Tara, lovely to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
And lovely to have a selection of South African wine. I had a flick through your store downstairs. You've got quite a nice selection here.
Well, it didn't quite start out as big as it is now. We actually had a friend from South Africa who came and felt that the selection of wine available on St. Helena was quite inferior to what they would expect. So when he took my dad down to South Africa, he started taking him round on some of the wine tours, and that is where our wine selection really grew from.
And when I arrived on the island, my only knowledge and understanding of wine in St. Helena was that Napoleon liked the sweet wine of Constantia. So I was expecting to see people drinking gallons and gallons of Groot Constantia and Van der Constance and those sweet wines. That hasn't been the case. What is the reality of wine? What is the wine culture here in St. Helena today?
Well, I think that it has changed quite a lot over time, and I would say there is a lot of people who do enjoy sweet wine. They probably don't enjoy the Van der Constance on a daily basis, or as much as Napoleon drank when he was here. But we have seen a definite shift in people's taste. And that's also gone from South African wines as St. Helena's tourism industry has opened up, and we've started to bring in wines from Germany, Italy, Australia, and Chile, which obviously has a very different profile. And so we've just seen people become more adventurous with what they taste. So it's gone from drinking what was previously Four Cousins and Two Oceans to now enjoying some more sophisticated wine, if I can say.
My suspicion would be that there are two challenges in your mission to spread the gospel of great wine. One of them is that you've got to get people introduced to the wine and get them to discover it and like it and drink it. But the other is the taxation, because I believe there is a reasonable duty imposed on wine when it comes into the country.
Yes, so for every bottle of $7.50 wine, you pay £5.50 in duty to the government. So, I mean, and there is also the affordability factor in St. Helena as well. So when you have a £12 bottle of wine on the shelf, £5.50 of that is actually going back. So it doesn't leave a lot of margin, but I think to import the wine in the volume and variety that you do, there has to be a background of wine lovers. And I think it's fair to say that's what we are as a kind of Rose and Crown family, is we do enjoy our wine.
To the extent that you set up one of the great wine tasting events the island has had, and I believe that's spilt over into a bit more interest, a bit more excitement in wine locally.
Yes, and I like to take a little bit of credit for it to some extent because it does give people the opportunity to step outside their comfort zones. I mean, to be honest, I've got the Cliff Pinotage 2021 here because this is my dad's favorite. So whenever we go out now, he will always, and he's getting quite particular as well. I will go as far to say he's become more of a wine snub now because he wants the Cliff Pinotage, but I have to look for the 2021 vintage. And so people, you know, they kind of sit in their comfort zones. And so the annual wine tasting event is giving people the opportunity to be able to sample wines that they wouldn't normally, you know, move away from. And whether that's people who say that they only drink reds and they have an opportunity to try the whites, or those who think that you should never drink a rosé. So, no, I like to think that we've helped people just to broaden their palate a bit.
I love your choice of Bayers' Pinotage because my very first date with my first girlfriend at university was exactly that bottle of wine over dinner, feeling very sophisticated and proud of myself. And it's a wine that is not just enduring because Bayers is such a great winemaker, but it's a great example of South African wine. And South African wine dominates the wine lists I've seen on the island, the wine that I've seen on your shelves. So that, I'd imagine, is predominantly what people are drinking here.
Yes, and I mean, the fact that we have so much South African wine is partly because of the geography, but also because the RMS St. Helena that used to serve the island before we had our airport used to call into Cape Town. So people knew the Robertson's wines, they knew a lot of the selection there. So we had to go with what people knew as well, just to try and have a platform for enjoyment.
So your dad, the wine snob, leans towards his red wine. The proximity to the ocean, the climate, would suggest more white wine than red wine to me. What's the general profile of a wine drinker in St. Helena?
Well, you do have a proportion who enjoy the sweet wine. We've learned a lot. I think it was about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we were very fortunate to have Jeanette Brewer from Springfield come out to visit the island, and she agreed in her holiday time to host a week of wine events with us. So we partnered up with the Mantis Hotel we are staying now and introduced sessions for workshops for people who work in the industry. Then we had a pairing with a dinner followed by a full tasting where even her friends who were on island at the time helped with the sampling, and it really helped to educate us. So obviously in St. Helena, as you can tell, it's very, very warm. And I would say the temperature is probably about 28 degrees now. So if we had to try and drink this, it probably wouldn't be as enjoyable. So we've had to try and encourage people to chill their bottle of red before maybe an hour, so that, you know, you really get the full flavor. Whites are very popular. We've had a German, and I'm going to try and pronounce it right. It's the Riesling or Riesling. So that's been a nice popular one, and that's obviously a more natural sugar wine. I feel like I'm speaking out of turn now.
Not at all, and I love the fact that this wine tradition is picking up, and I love the fact that there is more than just the kind of the standard wines that you might expect to find on a small international wine list. In fact, I saw downstairs from Delheim the Staying Alive. Lange is also an example of a Riesling, which is almost a brand new wine, and the fact that I find it here is so exciting.
Yes, well, to be honest, my dad met Nora when he was doing one of his wine tours, and that is how we actually ended up having Delheim. And Delheim is one of the wines we've had on our shelves now for, I would say, the very first wine tasting that my mom and dad did, which doesn't form part of our annual events, that would have been about 13 years ago, had Delheim on the list, and it still remains a popular favorite today.
As it should. They're making some terrific wine, and you might not know this, but Lange, the winemaker now, is the first black woman to be a head winemaker at an estate in South Africa, and on top of that, she's the Young Winemaker of the Year as of last year. So you've got some serious talent making your wine downstairs.
Thank you very much to the Delheim team.
All right, so you got Delheim, you've got a wonderful range of Springfield downstairs as well. probably your limitation in growing this range is the number of people who are able to buy it and wanting to drink it. Is that edging upwards? Do you foresee in the next few years the wine that you're able to sell and to showcase here growing as more people develop a love for it?
Yes, I mean, well, our population at the moment is around 3,800. So we do rely a lot on visitors and friends and family who come from overseas to help enjoy some of that wine with us. But I would say that there is definitely going to be an opportunity for more varieties to come in. I might need a little bit of help from you in introducing some new lines, but I think that there's definitely a market for more events to happen like this. I mean, you can see from our shop downstairs, it's kind of a sideline to what we do with everything else. And we spend so much time investing in promoting the wine, but it still just sits in a little corner. So in time to come, I hope that we will be able to have our own little Rose and Crown bottle store with mini events, and you'll be invited back to do a tasting.
I look forward to it. It's very firmly in the diary, Tara. I do want to ask you a particular question about Helena. Before I do that, you've got a bottle in the middle here, which you were talking very highly of. I believe you have one of these for breakfast every day, and you were quite keen to share it with me. What have we got here? What are we going to have a taste of?
So this is the Bagliati Organic Rosé, and to be honest, I do enjoy it a lot, but the reason I put it on the table was because I was hoping that you were going to be able to give me some kind of indication about what the tasting profile means. So I'm going to turn the camera on you and put you back on the spot to tell me a little bit about, you know, what that means for the rosé and the fact that it's an organic rosé.
Well, I think the fact that it's an organic rosé is kind of in keeping with where a lot of wine trends are, especially in South Africa. You know, we're trying to make wine that does more justice to the ground from which it comes and not leave any lasting damage. And generally, if you speak to a lot of the winemakers, they feel that they're making a better wine if they're looking after the earth and the soil as well as they can, and it's going to lend itself to better wine. And then in terms of rosé, there's something of a revolution in South Africa. Rosé used to be kind of sickly sweet and really bright pink, kind of Barbie movie in a wine. It's changed a lot now, not entirely, there's still examples of those, and for some people that's perfect, but it's more of a savoury wine, it's wine that's more delicate, and it's wine that in South Africa throws more of a nod to the styles of rosé of the south of France, where you're getting something in a glass that's delicate, it's elegant, it's still got some beautiful fruit to it, and it's pairing rather nicely with a summer's day somewhere along the coast on the south of France, or possibly in an Italian format with a few bubbles, pairs perfectly with a mid-morning glass somewhere on the island of St. Helena.
Well, the fact that it's organic then means that we're doing our bit for the environment.
We are indeed. In fact, if we don't drink this now, we'd probably be leaving the world in a worse place. So we have a moral obligation to have a glass, I think.
Good. I'll let you do the honours.
As I open this, which I will have, it's a lovely bottle. Have a look at that. That's glorious. Bagliati, number 7 organic rosé. As I'm opening this is a bottle that has, I think, many opportunities. Probably something great to have with food, which we try and encourage more people to do. Bubbles is not just for celebrating or for a nice sunset or somebody's birthday. It can go really well with food. But it would be perfect to open somewhere beautiful on the island. You will know the island slightly better than I do. In fact, we're going hiking with your husband Tom a little later on. So as a family, you clearly know the place very well. Where should I be taking a bottle such as this for that perfect view and that perfect spot on the island of St. Helena?
Well, I mean, I don't want to spoil the surprise that Tom has for you, but I know that he's planning on taking you to Blue Point this afternoon. So who knows? He might have a second bottle for you to enjoy on your sunset.
All right, well, let's see if it's one I will like. I suspect I will if this is what Tara has for breakfast every day. But let's tough it in.
So, of course, these are the tasting glasses that we use for our annual wine tasting event, and it's not in a champagne flute. But does that make a difference when it comes to sampling the bubbles?
So I'm going to tell you a secret, and you can't tell anybody else this. I'm not sitting on camera. So when we have particularly good bubbles at home, I tend to use champagne flutes because it minimises the amount I have to give everybody else and have a big glass myself. And in honesty, away from the frivolity, I prefer a glass like this, even a slightly bigger one, because it allows me to take in more of the wine. And the champagne flute looks very elegant, but it narrows down at the funnel, and I prefer just getting a bit more of what's in that glass, because there often is so much more to the bubbles than just the effervescence that catches the eye. There's the depth of fruit and the depth of flavour that deserves a bit of reward, and I suspect we'll get it from this.
Cheers.
How do I say cheers on the island? Just cheers?
Yes.
No special secret St. Helena word.
You can try bottoms up.
Bottoms up. Bottoms up from St. Helena. So good it could almost be South African. No, not just delightful to drink and perfect for mid-morning, but also, as earlier, it's got a wonderfully savoury profile. It's got some soft red fruit to it. There's a loveliness to it, but it's also something that, maybe you've got some fresh crayfish or lobster out the water, or it's got that kind of profile that I think could go rather nicely. Alternatively, just sit watching a St. Helena sunset and enjoy it on its own.
Very good. Well, I'll be sure to tell Ian at Mantis that this will go well with their crayfish that they've got down there.
Do exactly that. Before we set off, because I've got to steel myself for a 7-hour march around the island with your husband, which I'm really looking forward to. If you had a message to the South African winemaking community about coming to St. Helena, coming to experience it, coming to bring some wines to showcase, what would that message be?
Well, I would say that it's a great opportunity to come and promote what it is they have to offer, but enjoy St. Helena. This is the perfect time for you as well. We've got our whale sharks, and it just is the perfect place to introduce a new element of their wine range.
I think you need no more incentive, winemakers of South Africa. A stroll through Rose and Crown, a quick glance to the shelves, and you're seeing a Springfield work of time and life from stone. You're seeing the wines of Durham, including that new Riesling from Nonthabur, amongst a range of others. It's a concise range, but it's going to grow, and that's going to grow because of people like Tara. Thank you for the time, and to many more glasses in St. Helena.
Thank you.
Cheers. So that's the Rose and Crown and the collection of wine. Vonderling with a big presence here. The guys from Springfield, a fair amount of wine coming through there as well. Some of the Delheim, including that wonderful staying alive Riesling from Bolanga. It's great to see South African wines not just appearing, but being absolutely relished, which I think is what is about to happen, because very kindly Steve has allowed me to delve into some of the vintage treasures of his cellar, and this was your selection. You decided we should go with a bottle of Pinotage. Is that a particular favourite?
Yes, it's nice. It's a nice drinking wine, and I have it quite often.
All right, well, let me pass you a glass here. This is from 2011, so it's got a good 13 years on it. Cheers, and thank you for having us at the Farm Lodge Country House.
Thank you.
Let's see how it's drinking 13 years on. I think that's in a very nice place.
It is. I think it is. It is. It works.
It does indeed. And I see that it's part of quite a large collection of KWV. How did so much South African wine find its way to your cellar?
When I was coming out to come to St. Helena for good, I bought all the wines out that I could, and that was, what I was going to do, because we got a hotel, so I was going to use as much as I could, but unfortunately it seems that the people on St. Helena, well, not the people on St. Helena particularly, but I had to I had to get English wines to get out here. But then, of course, I found that South African wines are also here at the time, and so it ended up that I ended up drinking all the English wines, and the other wines were all South African.
Well, we're very happy to find South African wine here. What about your guests from around the world? Do they enjoy the South African wine here?
Oh yes, I can remember when it started really from England. I always remember Cape Town and all those places. And I think the South African wine is very good wine.
And this is aged particularly well, and I love the fact that you've managed to keep it so well, because this island can get quite warm, so your little cellar's a great place to keep it all.
Yeah, it does work actually, yeah.
It works particularly well for South African wine. It would also work, I'd imagine, for wine from Helena. And the wine from Helena is not the sweet Constantia style you might have anticipated, but instead is something rather different. There's only one wine that is made here in Helena. The grapes, the juice comes over from South Africa, and then it's made into something rather special named after a lady called Sally. I sat down at Anne's restaurant down in Jamestown to find out how this wine came to be and see just what a St. Helenian wine will taste like. Well, the first meal I had on the island when I touched down on Saturday was right here at Anne's place. We had some very freshly coursed wahoo. It was superb, and it made for a really, really good introduction to the island. But as I sat at the table looking around, I saw nobody, as I was expecting, was glugging down gallons of Constantia sweet wine, as per the history and legend of Napoleon. And if you remember from both the show on Monday, but also from the conversation with Tara you heard earlier on in today's show, it's not really something that happens a great deal. Instead, it's a very different wine world in 2024 on the island, and the majority of the wine comes from South Africa. There's a little bit from France and from Italy and from Germany, and then there's one wine that's kind of from St. Helena, and this is it. Now this is Sally's Shiraz. It's arguably the finest red wine made in St. Helena. It might also be the only one, but we'll set that aside and instead meet the person who's inspired this, because the Sally in question is the Sally beside me. Hey Sally, how are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm honoured. I'm sitting next to somebody who has wine named after them. This must make you extremely important.
Well, that happened as it was a fluke. My husband is the distiller on the island. He makes a lot of different alcohol, but then he decided to make a brandy. So to make a brandy, he had to import juice to turn it into wine and then into the brandy. And then we decided to bring in some red juice, which we did. At that time, he broke his leg, so I had to make the wine myself, and then instructions given by him, and hence my name went on the wine, and it stuck.
So this is from grape juice brought in from South Africa, I presume?
Yes.
So you've brought this in and you've turned it into St. Helena wine.
Correct. And because, well, basically, then we don't pay the duty, because the duty for importing alcohol wines is quite heavy here, so we have to pay the duty on the juice, and then we turn it into wine here.
It's a really cool story, and I love the South Africa-St. Helena collaboration. Does it speak to a history of wine on the island? There are a lot of people who enjoy wine, who've taken to this quite proudly as being a local product?
Yes, there's quite a few people who do drink our wine. Of course, it doesn't come up on the same line as the imported wine, but it's drinkable, and people do enjoy it.
And does this come from you and Paul having a love of wine?
For me.
Hence the Sally's Shiraz.
Yes.
Now that's quite a brave thing to do, because making wine is not simply looking at the side of a packet and 2 parts this and 1 part that and bang. There's a bit of a process to it. How challenging was it for you to make this?
Very challenging, very, very challenging. Of course, we didn't go off to go to school or learn about it. It was just trial and error here on the island.
So you've produced this Shiraz. We're going to taste it in just a moment. Is this the only one, or are there a few wines that you've made?
No, it all depends on what juice our supplier can get for us. We have to order maybe a year ahead, depending on how the harvest is going. So usually we bring in Shiraz juice, Pinotage for our 2 reds, and then we bring in a Chenin and a Sauvignon Blanc for the whites.
And how does that reflect on the tastes of people on the island? What do people like to drink on St. Helena?
quite a few St. Helenians like sweet wine. Unfortunately, ours are not sweet. They're on the drier side, but they are enjoying it.
And this sits as part of your distillery. You don't just make wine. You've mentioned the brandy. What
Brandy.
else have you got?
So we do a brandy, we do an aged rum. The rum sits in the barrel for at least 6 years. And then we do a coffee liqueur, which is St. Helena coffee. We do a lemon liqueur, which we use St. Helena lemons. And we also do a gin.
Sounds like you have a lot of fun doing what you do.
Yes, we keep trying.
All right, well, we've got some of the Sally's Shiraz. I feel quite honoured to be drinking Sally's Shiraz with Sally. So
Thank you.
Cheers and
Cheers.
thank you. As I try it, what should I be expecting? What's this wine giving me as a red Sally tribute?
It'll be lovely.
That's a great tasting note. I love that. I think I could drink this quite happily.
I do.
Oh, there's a wonderful tribute, and this is just something that each year changes. What's available will make something new, make something different.
Yes, that's basically it.
All right, I'm certainly enjoying it. I also, as I mentioned at the start, I really enjoyed the food here at Anne's. I've enjoyed every meal I've had on the island. If I was pouring a glass of Sally's Shiraz and I was coming round to see you and Paul for dinner, what do you think would go perfectly with this from a St. Helena point of view?
I would use tuna, anything in the red meat line that I would normally have a Shiraz with.
And tuna being the red meat of fish.
Fish, yes.
Is perfect.
Nice.
I think I'd really enjoy that. It's a really cool story, and thank you for sharing it with me. Good luck with the continuation of these, and you never know, maybe we'll see some of these pop up in South Africa in due course.
I hope so. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So a big smile on Sally's face, like so many of the people we've met here in our time in St. Helena, just so warm and welcoming and engaging, and with a great story to tell. I haven't met anybody who doesn't have a great story to tell on this island, and so willing to share them, and in the case of Sally, willing to share her wine. And just as an added tasting note, if you're wondering, here's the honest opinion away from Sally. It's got a light red fruit easiness to it. It's a gentle charm. It's nothing overly complex, but particularly in slightly warmer and more humid climates, I think it does the job quite nicely. And it's a lovely tribute to Sally and to her family and to the island of St. Helena. An island, of course, which you call home, and very, very happily, Steve. If people are coming to the island or thinking about coming to the island, what for you is the charm, the attraction? Why should people come and visit St. Helena?
Oh, I think it's a very nice island. We're very spoiled. The weather is very, very, climate is very nice, but the people are so nice, and everybody knows everybody else, and I thoroughly enjoy it, and I was pleased to stay here.
So thank you, Steve. We really appreciate you having us here in your cellar and having you to stay at Farm Lodge Country House. And the last thing I must say, I have heard rumours that there's a very attractive young lady called Maureen who makes incredible food. I believe I should be looking forward to that.
Oh, good. Yes. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers, Steve. Thank you very much indeed. So over a bottle of vintage KWV Pinotage found in this slightly unexpected but wonderful little cellar beneath the Farm Lodge Country House, we say goodbye for this week from St. Helena. It's been a terrific week exploring the island, meeting people, learning stories, and discovering the wine culture that's not just Napoleon of hundreds of years ago, but today is largely South African wine, has a small but growing footprint, and it's people like Steve and like Tara and like Sally are helping to celebrate that love of wine on the island. I've got some more exploration to do. The grounds of Farm Lodge Country House are spectacular, so we're off to have some more adventures, possibly with a glass of wine in hand. Join us on the show next week on Monday. We'll be back in South Africa where we celebrate the glories of Semillon with some wonderful winemakers, including Trizan Barnard who'll be with us, Jean Smith will be with us. We will also have, I think, Jasper Vickens joining us, plus Gerard Holden, amongst others. For now, though, and Gottfried Mocker too. For now, I think Steve and I might just have to finish off this bottle in the purposes of research. We'll see you again next week. From St. Helena, cheers, and Steve, cheers again, and thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.